Good morning. This is the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 85. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. We just got done with Muster 022 and the post-Muster FTX down in San Antonio, and it was, as always, absolutely amazing. It's incredible just how much the Muster continues to improve. And I believe that's a testament to the principles that we teach at Echelon Front. We are students of what we teach, and our operations team, led by the fearless leader, Jen Tarantino, is absolutely unreal. Our operations team, I will put them up against any ops team in the world, and that's not a derogatory comment towards any other companies that I work with incredible companies that have outstanding operations teams all across the world. But I will say the team that we have here at Echelon Front is unmatched, and it is apparent by our events. The muster that we do it's a 2-day leadership event, conference, whatever you want to call it, that Jocko and Leif started back in 2016. The very first muster was in October of 2016. It actually was on the 1-year anniversary from when the book Extreme Ownership came out. And I've seen how much it has evolved. Now, Jamie Cochran, our Chief Operations Officer, created the muster with Jocko and Leif, and that was her baby. You know, she did events in college. That was her job. And when she worked at the university in San Diego, and I mean, when it comes to events, Jamie Cochran is unreal with the way her brain works and how her attention to detail just is unmatched. And it also shows Jamie's leadership capabilities to have been able to train and equip Jen Tarantino to do the same with the muster. Now that Jen is our director of operations, runs all, our ops team, runs the muster. So our Jamie literally just shows up for the most part. Now she has a little bit of input because that's her baby, that's her event. Just like me with FTXs, I show up and I don't really have anything to do. I might have some input occasionally. I'll ask Cody a few questions or ask Josh some questions or Jesse or Justin, like, hey, why do we have a lot of J's.
We got a lot of J's.
A lot of J's on the FTX team. James.
Joe.
Yeah. But the muster is just unreal. And I just want us to talk about the muster, the takeaways, what I got from the muster, Josh, what you got from the muster, because I know when you go, you're working with the ops team and merch, and then now you've shifted over, and we'll just talk about that shift and that transition as well, as things have grown and elevated at Echelon Front for you. But you also have a unique perspective where you get to talk to a lot of the attendees about what their favorite takeaways were from the muster. And then as they're, are they going to the FTX? And then people are asking you about questions about the FTX and other services that we provide. And so I just thought it'd be a cool opportunity for us to debrief the muster and debrief the FTX. Jonathan and Ann Montgomery from First in Nutrition attended the post-muster FTX. They did awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Lucas asked when we're driving back, I was calling anybody and everybody that I thought would be awake just to talk to on that drive home. As I was, muster week's a rough week, for us on the staff side. We're getting up at 3:30 every morning because we do the PT before the group. The attendees show up to do the PT.
Pre-T.
We do the pre-T, what? We do the pre-T PT. Can't say that twice in a row. And, and then we're not calling it until like 11 would be early.
Yeah.
If you're shutting it down at 11, like that's an early night.
Yeah.
And so, you're running on fumes, and I was driving back and I was good. I felt good for the drive, but I know if I can talk with people and engage with them. Had a good conversation with Alex Stone, which I want to talk about on this podcast as well. So if I forget, redirect me back there. Just one of the things Lucas asked, he's like, how'd they do? Because they've been coming to every muster since muster 014.
Yeah. Yeah, she said.
That's 8 musters in a row.
Yeah.
And they go to the council.
3.5 years. They go to the council.
Yeah. And we'll just kick off this episode real quick with this statement, and then we'll open it up to, just our general, how are you doing, what questions you have. But I was driving them back to the hotel afterwards so we could shower, change, and we had our debrief and we'll final closing out ceremonies for the FTX. And Jonathan sits down in the car, and Ann sits down there as well, and they both kind of are like, whoa. And Jonathan looks at me and he goes, this is not what I was expecting. in a good way, I feel like he said that in a good way. And I was just asking him, I'm like, what were you guys' takeaways? What do you guys think? And I'm phrasing, and I hate phrasing because I wish I could say exactly what they said verbatim because it was an incredible quote. But it's something along the lines that Jonathan said, he goes, the FTX gives you instant return on your investment takeaways that we can go apply to our business and lives right now.
Yeah.
It's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah.
To say, hey, we have instant return on investment. We can go start applying these things right now. And it's just incredible to see what Cody has done with the FTX program, how much better he's made it, how much it's grown. And, there's another guy that I was sitting there talking with in between runs. We weren't even done with the day. And he told me he had already checked the website for the next individual FTX. The one that we have in September, FTX 017, has one spot left. So if you're listening, there's one spot left for that. And Cody and I are going to open up another one in October. And this guy wants to bring 14 of his executive leaders to the FTX. And, obviously he wasn't able to because there's only one spot left. And he's asking me, he's like, hey, when's that going to be released? And I told him, soon, we're working on it. It'll be probably the first week of October. And he said, can you let me know before you make it live? I don't want to lose those spots. And I said, sir, I will hold you 14 spots for that. And to me, that's just such a powerful testimony to the impact that he had already seen and experienced. And we weren't even done with the day.
Right.
Where he's wanting to commit 14 of his leaders to come to the FTX. And it just makes me proud of Cody and you and Justin and obviously, the role players that aren't just role players. Like those guys are invested in the program of making it better. Jesse running all the role players and, Justin when he was doing that. And then as he's transitioned to sales and helping build out Echelon front on the sales side through data and sales, but then also pouring into the FTX program. And man, I was just reflecting. I'm just so thankful of just having people on the team that care. And, even to the point where I'm talking with Lucas on the drive home and he's been able to come out to an FTX and observe, and he helped with some media stuff and with what we do with the podcast. Like Lucas is all fired up about, okay, how do we get more FTXs on the calendar for you guys? I'm just so overwhelmed with gratitude of just an incredible muster coming off of that. And then, just think about what we get to do every day. So I think it'd be cool for us to debrief that and talk about it. But before we do that, Lucas, how are you, buddy?
I'm fantastic, man.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's
some new stickers in the water bottle. I like it.
Yeah. Those are now they're old stickers because they're from 020. We're 2 musters ahead of that now.
Dang, bro.
Yeah, it was fun getting to chat with you on the way back from San Antonio, and then yesterday on the Sunday Fun Day call that First in Nutrition does, John and Ann debriefed a little bit about their experience on the FTX, and it was pretty cool to get to listen to some of their takeaways and just Jonathan's perspective, talking about, we've been in the game for a while with Echelon front, and we know the principles of extreme ownership, but as soon as you get those laser tag guns in your hand, that everything you thought you knew just goes right out the window, and then it's all about take out the enemy. And just the takeaways that he had from that, and then learning to work with people that you wouldn't typically. That there were some people that he got grouped with that maybe wouldn't have been the exact type of people he would hire at his business. They wouldn't be first in material necessarily, but regardless, that they're going to be those people that you got to work with and coach along. But it's not that they didn't have good ideas or meaningful things to say. It was just one of those. He was like, "This guy probably wouldn't have been a good fit for our business, but as we're going through this, hey, this is what we got to work with." He's got valuable input. They've got something that they can see that I can't, And so I got to take that into account. And so just listening to them talk about that was really, really cool.
Yeah. And one of the things I know when we had them on the podcast, but I have just completely failed to mention occasionally when we talk, like anybody that listens to this podcast, if you go to firstinnutrition.com/JPPod, so JPPOD, you get 4 free weeks of training with them. That's incredible.
Yeah, and then you can go back and watch the Sunday Fun Day because it's in the app. You can go back and watch it and see what his takeaways from the FTX are.
That's freaking legit.
It's rad.
Talk about value.
Yeah. Which he also does for all muster attendees too.
Yeah, it's incredible what they do, and they have hearts that are just unreal. Like they genuinely care, they genuinely serve. They like, helping people. I was heavy on the First In Nutrition warpath and, lost a bunch of weight, got back where I needed to be, had some of my health stuff come up, which, in the future we'll talk about that when we actually know where we're going, when we actually understand, which, by the way, this week I have a TBI screener with the VA. Finally got that call back. I was all fired up. I'm like, cool, we're going to go get some tests done. No, it's a virtual screener to see what the next steps are.
Oh, nice.
It's all these gateways.
We're at least on
We're trending in the right direction.
Trending in the right
We
direction.
are closer than
This is our next piece of red tape.
Yeah. But, I say that to say is like, one, me falling off that nutrition path, there's no excuse. It doesn't matter health reasons or not. And I was talking with Jonathan, and it was just really cool how he was just coaching me through it. He was like, give yourself a little bit of grace. Like, you got a lot of stuff going on. And he just altered some stuff. He's like, hey, just start tracking this stuff. Like, let's just focus on this. And it's the things that I knew, but that's what's great about having a coach.
Yeah.
I know to do these things in jiu-jitsu, but when I have somebody coaching me, it's a game changer. Like when you did your competition, you knew everything to do, but then when you have Brent there coaching you,
I'm executing, maybe not flawlessly, but I'm very confident and very empowered.
But you're intentional with your execution.
Right.
And that's what good coaches do. That's what we as leaders should be doing. We do that for our kids.
Yeah.
Our kids know what to do, but we have to remind them and coach them and get them down the path. And that's what Jonathan and they do such a phenomenal job at First In Nutrition with that. So if you're listening and if you're ever just like, hey, I got some things I'd like to tighten up with my diet, or you already know what to do, but you want to, like I did, and I'm doing again now, this is my statement, my public statement, paint myself in the corner of just like getting back on the path, and you want to hold yourself accountable, go to firstinnutrition.com/JPPOD, 4 free weeks of training. But anyways, there's great humans and great coaches. And, one of the things Lucas asked is like, how'd they do? And I gave him my answer, and I'd love to hear yours without me saying it and just see how much it aligns with my perspective. Now, our perspectives are slightly different, but they're pretty similar because we're both detached from going on. What did you see in regards to Jonathan and Ann? Now, here's the deal. They made mistakes.
Yeah.
Like everybody does.
Yeah.
So we're not like just talking about them because they crushed it. I think they did very well. I don't know. We've never had anybody come through an FTX that just crushed it. No. It doesn't happen.
No.
We've had people come through multiple FTXs and there is significant improvement, like Lauren.
Yeah.
Like our boy Lauren. Like,
oh, yeah.
His improvement has been incredible over the years of coming to multiple FTXs and investing into himself and his team. But what did you see from Jonathan and Ann?
I think the biggest thing for me, for them, because the one factor, they've been in the game for 3.5 years. They know the principles. They use the principles in their work in their daily life. But the level of that little bit of stress where the natural tendencies come out, I think that's what you're saying. Nobody crushes it. Like, mistakes are going to happen because this is a real world test right away. Mm-hmm. I think for me, with those two in particular, was seeing how they could course correct much faster based off the principles that they had a foundation of. So they made a lot of the same mistakes that everybody makes, but the ability to recognize it, I think, faster was most noticeable to me.
And not repeat a lot of them.
Yes.
One of the things I told Lucas is I was impressed this goes with Lauren as well. Their ability to articulate their takeaways was absolutely impressive.
Yeah.
And I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. I can see it. I can see him. But he was at another FTX.
Oh, yeah. Rusty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same with him.
Yeah.
That guy, he came back like in the game.
Yeah.
And you could tell he had been working on implementing these things into his business and his life, because his debrief points were also very impressive.
Yeah.
But I was thoroughly impressed by Jonathan and Ann. And this just shows the value of being intentional with your training.
Yes.
That's how you improve. That's how you get better. I mean, you look at guys like Joao, who we train jiu-jitsu with. And I have a video of Joao and I, when he first came from Brazil. He was a purple belt, and him and I were rolling, and it was pretty even.
Yeah.
Now, he was technically much better than me, but when you calculated my size and strength being a dominating factor over him, it was, some of our rounds were neutral. There was some that he would get an upper hand, some that I would get an upper hand, but for the most part, it was just back and forth and very neutral. And I was watching this video of us rolling no-gi, and I was doing very well. If Joao and I train now, which, by the way, he's a black belt, and just dominating competitions, he destroys me.
Yes.
Joao destroys me. He trains full-time under Anthony, and they run a gym together, and his wife, Joao's wife, she's incredible. I mean, her technicalities as a jiu-jitsu practitioner and a coach are unreal. And so I think about that. Like, I haven't been very intentional with my jiu-jitsu training because it hasn't been a top priority.
Right.
And it just shows you guys like Joao, who it's their number one priority in life.
Yeah.
Outside of his marriage, obviously.
Right. Very intentional with it. It's leaps and bounds.
Dude, the last time we rolled, he put me to sleep. Just like, I came to, and he was like, "Oh, bro, are you okay?" And I'm like, what just happened?
How did that happen?
And the reason why I share that example is because intentionality applies to all aspects of your life.
Yes.
Amanda and I have been very intentional with our communication and our marriage is better than it has ever been. Now, do we have some problems? Yeah. And I know you and your wife have been doing the same, and Lucas and his wife do the same. But I mean, I can speak on my behalf because I know Amanda and I's marriage always hasn't been perfect. I mean, if anybody's listening to this podcast, you know what we went through, a divorce and getting it back, and even getting it back, me still not doing things that I should have been doing as a husband in regards to intentionality and leading my wife properly spiritually. So we didn't have at times the greatest marriage.
Right.
But since we've both been intentional, there's been a huge difference. And, it was cool seeing Jonathan and Ann come through an FTX, which, as Jocko and Leif talk about, it's one of our most impactful forms of training because it's real time application of the principles in a controlled, stress-induced environment. So do you want to, Lucas, would you like us to talk about the muster and then go FTX, or what are you thinking, bud?
Man, I think let's...
Because you've been to both.
Yeah, I have been to both. And I think let's start with muster and then piggyback onto the FTX, because that's the way that things kind of came down, right? Because now we're doing the day after FTX so that people can apply the principles that they learned at the muster. So let's talk muster, and then let's hop back into FTX, and let's get into a little bit of Alex Stone somewhere in between those things.
Yeah, that call with him was awesome, and it was just this shift of just some of the things I think about, especially when we're talking about leadership and life. So I already talked about how incredible the muster was from an operational standpoint. The amount of feedback that I get from attendees talking about how incredibly smooth the muster is. Now, we have our hiccups, but nobody sees them.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be because our team handles it and takes care of it. And it's just a testament, again, to Jen Tarantino and her team of, carrying, I would say, the flag of what Jamie built. And as Jamie was building it, Jen came on board. I think she wasn't at the very first muster, but she was at the second one, and she's been at every muster since and has been building out that program. So when you look at that from an operational standpoint, from a team growing and events just legitimately getting better and better and better, like, what's your thoughts on that, Josh?
It's definitely a testament to Jen. And I've seen, even from my side, that growth. but the way it's set up, the way the teams are set up, the SOPs, I think the fact that we apply the principles. So after every muster, the ops team debriefs. Mm-hmm. What can we do better? What can we change? And I think every little tweak as we go, I do think this felt like the smoothest one we've had. Doesn't mean there weren't those bumps, but I think the groundwork that was laid, and then as all the team has buy-in too, so if they see a problem, they're jumping on it to make it go away so the attendees don't see any of that. And I think it just has built to this point to where everybody's bought into what they started, and it's really made it smooth.
Mm-hmm. You've been working the ops side for years for musters. You helped out at our very first roll call in 2018. And then since then you've helped at musters that you could and became very consistent the last, 2-3 years?
Yeah, this may be year 4, I think.
That's crazy. I knew. Wow. Yeah. That's unreal. And so over the last 3 to 4 years, what evolution have you seen from your perspective, helping with the ops side and merch and, setting up the jiu-jitsu mats and tearing them down and, making sure the instructors have what they need in place for their talk, what's been the evolution that you've seen on that end? Because it's funny is I see some of it, but I don't see a lot of it, which is crazy at how good and smooth our ops team is, that instructors are at the muster, and you know what we're able to focus on? Our brief and interacting with clients.
Yeah,
that's all we have to worry about. It's just crazy to the point where, I don't even have to worry about having something to drink before I talk when I'm backstage, because Alan and all of you guys are taking care of all that, which is crazy. Because when I go speak at events, I think about those things. Okay, hey, when I get off my plane in the airport, if it's late at night, I don't know if the hotel I'm staying at is going to have a little snack area that I can buy drinks to have with me.
Right.
You assume every hotel does, but not the case. I've been to some hotels where they don't have any bottles of water or any drinks available. And I'm like, so I think about that stuff because I have to. When I get off a plane, cool, I'm going to stop. I'm going to grab some drinks, or I'm going to stop at a gas station along the way and make sure I have water for tonight and water for tomorrow while I'm speaking. At the muster, none of that is even having to be a thought because of how you guys think about everything.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you notice is when I first started, Jen was at merch, selling merch.
It's crazy.
With me and a group. And now if they show up, so Jen and Lindley, if they show up and try to do anything, or Jamie will come by sometimes and try to sell merch, and we're just like, nope, go.
Get out of here.
We've got this, because of the buy-in and how actually implementing decentralized command to the point that it actually works, because everybody's bought in and empowered. I think that's the biggest change I've seen, is everybody knows what needs to be done and do it, but there's also the list of SOPs, so nothing gets missed along the way. Yeah.
List of SOPs. That's critical. And they give you guys parameters. You're not in this tight little box.
No.
It's very good communication in regards to, hey, this is what we have going on. Here's why. And they let you guys create the plan.
Correct.
Awesome. When you think about leadership, what have you experienced and seen from your perspective in regards to the growth of Jen Tarantino?
Oh.
And then we're going to go Lindley. And then also we have to give a shout out to our girl Heather, who is instrumental in the musters and also the operations side of FTX.
Yes.
But what's your thoughts on that team?
So when I first started, that's all I did. I wasn't doing FTX at the time. So it's been cool to see that growth. Yeah, I can't say enough about how awesome it is, how Jen has just continually stepped up and built a good team around her. And she's so accessible too. I mean, because I always joke with my wife, if somebody calls, she's like, who's that? I'll be like, my boss. And she's like, that could be it. Literally, if anybody calls me from Echelon Prun, I'm like, that's my boss, because I'm going to do whatever they're asking. So I work for everybody there. But she's so accessible too. And if there's ever any confusion or problem, she's always good to reach out to, clarification, easy to align with, I guess is the main thing I'm saying. And even as she's gotten more up and out, it's not like she's so detached that she's not involved.
Yeah.
It's the commander's intent is clear. She's still there, but she also trusts the team with how we've done it. And I think it's a perfect execution of how leadership should be.
Yeah. And it's such a good example of what Jamie has done as a leader. Like just showing her people what to do and how to do it, and why, and part of that is you do have to show people how to do things.
Yeah.
People, I think they underestimate how important it is at the beginning when you're working with somebody to be hands-on.
Yes.
In a growth way. Like, hey, you're helping them grow to learn skill sets. Part of that is being hands-on and making corrections. When I in the SEAL teams, when I was teaching close quarters combat to new guys, we were very hands-on.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about doing live fire shooting in a kill house, feet away from your buddy as you're shooting and moving. Absolutely, I'm going to be hands-on. I will be hands-on until you can show me the skill sets and what you've been able to do. And I know, Lucas, that's something that you obviously do as a pastor. I mean, when you're growing your staff and you're looking for individuals that show potential, I mean, you do the same thing.
Well, hands-on is the way that you have to be if you want successful teams. Right. There's been a big shift in the last few years to doing stuff that's a little bit more virtual just because we did from COVID and there's some convenience in that. But when you look at, so let's say the development of, who do we mention? Jen, Lindley, and Heather, right? They got it because they were there being part of the team. And then you get noticed whenever you're there, you're doing the hands-on training because the people who are leading you are the ones who are training you on how to do something. They're like, all right, this person has an aptitude for this. And then once you hit a certain success rate, it's more than just numbers on a sheet that they can see. No, they're proficient in this, and now they've got spare time. And then it's the matter of like, what are you doing with that spare time? And that's the biggest thing that I look at whenever we're doing hands-on training is, okay, so you got done, 2 months ago, you couldn't do any of these things. Now you can do them with a wonderful level of proficiency and efficiency. And so now you got 2 extra hours in your day that is being taken up with nothing. What are you doing with those 2 extra hours? Are you finding things to do? Yeah. Are you scrolling on Instagram? Are you watching pickleball videos? Like what's happening during those 2 extra hours? And the people who are coming to me and they're like, hey, I got done everything. Do you want to check my work? I got a couple of hours left. Are you asking to go home early? Or are you saying, hey, what can I do? What can I help with? Is there something new that you can teach me to do so that I can be more helpful in other areas? All right, well, that's the person that I'm going to want to take and promote. It sounds like that's the path that particularly that Jen's taken now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been pretty cool.
Well, I think kind of what you said too, across the board, the whole team, like we have with the SOPs set fire teams that we work within with set parameters that we do. But if anybody comes up to any of us and is like, hey, I need help with this, everybody's looking to help and cover and do what needs to be done to fill those times. So we're kind of at a good spot setting up this section. Well, I need help over here. Cool. I can break off, do that, and come back. And I think having buy-in from everybody because they know the mission, I think that's another really good thing is Jen's done an incredible job of just making sure everybody knows why we're doing what we're doing. It's not just, hey, sell these shirts. Hey, do that. Full buy-in with everything. And even to that, I think we have, at every muster, we have the commander's intent meeting, and that's Jocko, Leif, and Jamie, the top 3, just coming in and making sure everybody's aligned. And it's a little motivation too. I don't know if that's ever the intent, but it turns out to be that. But well, I mean, the motivation is going to come naturally because you're hearing from Jocko, Leif, and Jamie and Jen of like what their intent is and what we need to do. But just because it's those individuals doesn't mean you're going to be motivated. Correct.
I think the motivation comes to those who are motivated,
correct,
that want to be a part of a winning team, that want to go out there, and so I love the commander's intent that we have every muster because it's great because one, it's the commander's intent.
Yeah.
And every organization should be doing that.
Yeah.
You should be doing these things with your team regularly. Hey, here's the commander's intent. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's why we do what we do. Here's why it's so critical and important. And also when people come to a muster and they see our team implementing and living these principles real time, it's the greatest example to them of what they should be doing when they go back.
Right.
So what is the commander's intent meeting? Because this is the first time I'm hearing about this as something that happens in the muster. It is something that I think organizationally has a massive effect on how successful an organization is because it's the, do it because I said it, or like, hey, no, I understand why I have to do this. I also understand the level at which it's supposed to be done. And you give somebody the opportunity to make decisions better within a given circumstance whenever they have the commander's intent, right? Mm-hmm. So what's a commander's intent meeting look like?
So the way we do it at the muster, it's right after we have lunch with everybody. And then Jen kicks it off with her intent for what we're, hey, thank you for being here at the muster, thanking everybody for being there, general things that somebody should be saying when they're talking to their group, acknowledging the people are there. And then also just giving out information like, hey, we have 9 people that are normally here that are not able to be here because of either health reasons or new babies or, whatever, right. Just explaining like, hey, we're going to have 9 people short of this team. So that means we're going to need a little extra. We're going to need a little more intentional extra cover and move.
Right.
And it's just a broad overview of like, hey, here's what's going on as a reminder to the team of what they need to be doing and why. And then it allows people just to understand the flow. And it's another opportunity to remind people, hey, the reason why the muster is successful is because we use these principles. Make sure you're using these principles. And then Jen would flow through like the different individuals, like Steve Ward put out some information. I put out some information about PT, different, Lindley put out some stuff. I think Heather put out some stuff. And then, Jamie would have something to say. And then it went to Leif. And then the final was Jocko. So it's the commander's intent up the chain of command from all these different levels. And Jocko wraps it up with his thoughts, ideas, and, words of wisdom and advice. And you call it motivation if you want. Yeah. I know I get motivated every time all of those individuals talk.
Same.
Is he using the psychological warfare tracks in the background?
That would be amazing.
No, it's not staged.
Could you imagine? And so the commander's intent meeting can also go from each department as they work up to that final individual that's going to speak. And it should never only be one person talking for the commander's intent. It can be, and sometimes maybe that's the only option. But the way we do it is it runs up the chain of command.
Yeah, and
they all build upon each other.
Full alignment by doing that.
Yeah. I know we have some other things to dive into. I will say something for me that was really cool at this muster was getting to meet and run into people that were with us in the Battle Ramadi.
That's cool.
Really?
Yeah, there's a guy, Chip Hodges, who was there. And he was with the 1st 506 Infantry Division.
Right on.
With us in Ramadi. He was also with me out at Camp Crigador, that forward operating base on the eastern side of Ramadi. And we were just, so...
You guys were in the luxury suite together in Camp Crigador?
Yes. Just wait until you hear about where he was living, bro. This was incredible. So... Tuesday, so the night before the muster actually kicks off, I guess we consider that day 1.
Yeah.
Registration and meet and greet. So people come in, they check in, get registered, they get their swag bag, get all their information, for the day. And it's an opportunity for them to meet all the instructors. There's always a long line for everyone wanting to, meet Jocko and Leif, take pictures with them. The setup that we had at this meet and greet was unreal. It was outside. We were down in this big outside grass area at the hotel, and it was just perfect. I feel like it was probably one of the best registration meet and greets that we've ever done. The team had it to where there's like no lines for people checking in. There was no lines. There was no bogged down. They had tables set up everywhere. Different instructors were there. You could walk around. You could talk. So I'm walking around. I'm talking with some different attendees and some of the people that I recognize and that come back to multiple musters. And all of a sudden I hear Jocko yell out, "JP!" And I scan. I see him. And he's like, "Come here!" And so I run over there. And I didn't run, but I'm so I
walked with intent.
I know someone's gonna be like, "Oh, you just run when he calls you." No, so I move over there
I
with
would.
purpose.
Yeah.
No. But I'm just saying, I laugh. People are gonna twist that however they want, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Make a comment. Thank you. Boost the algorithms. And so I get over to Jocko, and he points to this guy he's standing next to. He's like, "He was with us in Ramadi," and I'm like, "What?" And so instantly, and he's like, "This is Chip." I'm like, "Hey, I'm JP." He's like, "Hey, man, Chip Hodges." So we just started talking, and it's just like the three of us just sitting there talking about Ramadi, and he was talking about this brief that he remembers from Jocko talking, and he was just, he's a 19-year-old private, and he says he just remembers sitting there going, "Oh shoot," because they're talking about how intense things were going to be, and how we could have casualties on this big push that we're going to be doing. And he said that him hearing it from a SEAL officer, just the way he received that was just different. Like a SEAL officer going, "This is going to be intense. This is going to be dangerous. We might have some casualties." And it wasn't because that's what Jocko wanted. Of course not. But Jocko is being very real. Like, hey, what we're getting ready to do is going to be very dangerous. Yeah. And it was also reiterated by the Marine Corps leaders and the Army leaders that were there. And so just getting to hear those stories and him sharing those stories to Jocko and I with some other attendees just sitting there. And there's like attendees sitting there just like wide eye, just going, "Oh my gosh." So him and I, we keep talking, and he's a golfer, and we're at a nice hotel that had a really good golf course there, and I was like, "Bro, you got to meet Bob Holland." He was just on Jocko's podcast again, talking about being a new guy, which that episode was
great,
unreal. And I was like, "Hey, Bob and I were in the SEAL teams together. He actually has a company called Hooli Golf. Like, if you're a golfer, you should check out their stuff. If you're not a golfer, you should also check out Bob's stuff at Hooli Golf. The polos and shirts that they have are super comfortable." And so I walk him over in their meeting. He's like, "Oh, bro, this is bad. I need to grab some of this stuff." And we just keep talking, and we keep talking, and we're talking more about Ramadi and all these things. And I was like, "Yeah, I was in Full Metal Jacket," which Full Metal Jacket is what we called the building that we stayed in. There's a bunch of soldiers and Marines in that building as well. And it's an old blown out building that we built up little living spaces in. And he goes, "You remember the chicken coops?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, that's where we were living out of." So they built out living spaces in these old chicken coops.
Wow.
I mean, he's a 19-year-old private in the Army.
Yeah.
In Ramadi. And we just started going down memory lane of different operations and just what it was like. And so for me, the muster was incredibly special awesome to be able to meet him. General McFarland was there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's rad.
Him and his wife came and attended the muster. So getting to see him and, just talk with him, and that was just unreal. Seth Stone's brother Alex was there. I don't know. For me, this muster was just very special with the people that were there, and it was really cool. But what type of interactions and feedback? Because you also, as you're now transitioning where you're working more of like the sales booth for FTXs and other things that we do at Echelon front, primarily focused on the FTXs, working with Justin on that. What type of interactions were you getting to have with people as they talked about, the different talks and what they're getting from it and stuff like that?
Well, it's really cool to see from that position. So this is the second time I've done it. But the way the breaks are, the attendees, as they come out the doors, we were just right there. So they had just whatever they had just heard, they wanted to share something that applied to their life or business. And it was really cool to see in that effect just how whatever stuck with them in there. They wanted to come find out about FTX, which is why they were coming up to me. But then they're like, yeah, and whether it was their first muster or their third, they just, whatever thing they had just heard or latched onto that any of you guys had talked about, they were already like trying to apply it into what they were doing, and it's awesome to see. I will say this one, I talked to a lot of first-time attendees, people who had never even read the book. This was their first experience, and they were blown away from the start, just consistently as the days went on, and they'd come back by and talk to me. They're like, I didn't think it could get any better. And I think it really was special because all of the ones I talked to were very open-minded and doing honest self-assessments from the start to try to apply the principles. And it was really cool getting to talk to them real time as they're computing it themselves. They're like talking it out with you. So it would lead to questions. It would lead to how they think they could apply it. And I don't know, it was really awesome.
Do you think that you get like a better opportunity to get some of that feedback too, because you have this sort of fly on the wall perspective, right? Like you're hearing the people have the conversations, whereas, you know, when you look at JP or you look at Leif or you look at Jocko, there's like a line of people that are coming up to them to like ask them stuff, or there's a group that's just kind of listening to everything that they have to say. But being at the booth, it's been my experience to just kind of be around listening to people have those conversations. Like I'm gathering more about what their actual takeaways are versus what they're really excited to say to somebody about the brief that they just heard.
Yeah, there's definitely a level to that. And a lot of times they have something personal to say to the instructors on how it that they may not necessarily say to me. They're more talking the principles. But you're absolutely right. It is almost like a fly on the wall type scenario because you're in it, but you're outside it, because I'm not the ones that we're teaching them. So it's more of a peer-to-peer discussion too. Yeah. And it's really cool to see as they work through that. Yeah.
There's always a lot of good feedback on the different instructors' briefs, which
Yes.
is cool because, I mean, every instructor is talking about something different, whether it's, you know, a shorter talk like Danny had as he's explaining decentralized command up on stage with Leif Babin, or Andrew Paul talking about cover move, or Cordell talking about prioritize and execute, or Meg Miller talking about simple. Like they have these awesome stories from life
Yes.
that translate to business, and they're up on stage with Leif. And then, you know, you have Steve Ward's talk about, you know, training and assessments, and, you know, Jason Gardner's, you know, talk about just, you know, complacency and being disciplined. And, you know, I talked about, you know, understanding your mission, and Sean Glass talks about accountability, and Carlos talks about, you know, relationships, and, you know, Hasby talked about, you know, training as well. And Cody talks about detachment, which his talk is so good.
Yeah.
When, you know, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
Like all the different types of talks. And Jamie's the barriers to extreme ownership. I love Jamie's talk about the barriers to extreme ownership. And then Dave and Jocko talk about the OODA loop and the extreme ownership loop that we teach at Echelon Front, and how those things can be applied to what you have going on in your life. And it's a really cool opportunity. I know I leave every muster with pages of notes.
Same.
Like, and they're typed. These are pages of typed up notes, and it's an opportunity for growth.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool too because I can take things. It's similar at the FTX. Like we've done multiple events. The laws of combat and the mindsets of victory are the same every time. Mm-hmm. The briefs aren't always the same, but ultimately the teaching principles are the same.
Yeah.
And it never gets old on learning something because of somebody else's perspective. I mean, I have a oil and gas guy come up, and we're just talking about FTX, and he's applying some of the principles he just heard Carlos talk about to his oil and gas business. I don't work in oil and gas, but even the questions and the phrases that he comes up with, his perspective, I can take a note on. Like I hadn't thought of it in that way, and it's really awesome to see.
Yeah. So I kind of want to shift to Lucas some questions he has, but I just kind of put you on the spot a little bit. So as you've been able to listen to some of the briefs, like if you were sitting there as a muster attendee, what would some of the takeaways be for you? And or what are some of the takeaways you've heard attendees give you? Because I know people are like sitting here listening like, okay, this is great. You guys are talking about an event that you guys did. Of course you're going to give it praise. Right. You know, now whether you come to a muster or an FTX or not, like that's irrelevant. I would love for you to, but as you're listening to this episode, I want you as a listener to be thinking about, okay, cool, they're talking about these things. How does it apply to what I have going on in my life? The very first one that I think you should really think about, and I hope that you got, is intentionality. How intentional our team is with applying these principles. That's why we're able to do what we do. That's why we have the events that we have. I mean, media and marketing, they're like involved in everything that we're doing to make sure that they're gathering information and getting clips and also helping with testimonies. And also, like Kim and Noah just talking and guiding instructors through things like, hey, cool, you just had these one-on-one sessions. That's like another thing. We have panels at the muster at the evening of the first hour of the first day where they can go sit and listen to different instructors talk about different things, and then or you can sign up for one-on-one sessions. Yeah, I had 5 one-on-one sessions on that very first evening of just getting to talk with 5 different leaders that have different things going on in their life and being able to, okay, hey, here's your problem, let's work through it, and then real time role play with them, give them takeaways. I had a guy come up to me on day 2. Was like, hey man, I called my person. I'm not trying to give out his information. I called my person, like we talked about, like we role played. We did a real time role play. He goes, I use that framework that we worked through, and he goes, I just want to say thank you. He goes, that was something I was able to implement right away. And he goes, it saved my team. We had coverage this weekend. Everything's good. Her mindset is back where it needs to be. Because I took ownership in this conversation, she did not feel like she was being attacked. We were on the same page. Now she feels more empowered to go do what she needs to do. And my weekend is going to be much better because now she's taken lead on these things so that I can actually be more strategic.
Right.
Dude, that's a win right there. Talk about, and that guy was like, that was worth the muster alone.
Just for that. Not even all the other info he got.
I hadn't even got to day 2.
Yeah. I think that's a large thing too, is there's no green room. So yeah, there's all these set places where you can have one-on-ones. You can go to the panel. You can stand in line at the meet and greet. But there was an area right next to me that was just ask an instructor. Like even on breaks, you guys none of the instructors are hiding. You're out there talking. I spent a lot of time with Rob Jones at that ask an instructor thing.
Him and his clipboard. Love you, Rob.
But so I got to hear most of his, but it, like you said, y'all are having one-on-one impact. There's no disconnect. It's not like you're just up on the stage teaching something and then you go backstage and you hang out and then it's the next person's turn. It's constant feedback. If somebody heard something that they related to and want to come talk to you, they can literally at any time have access to you guys while you're there, and you can role play with the instructor that's teaching you this and help you through it start to finish. And I think that's really cool. Another level I want to add too is the amount of debriefs even on yourselves. I know Rob did his talk and came out and he was like, all right, what can I do better? Already wanting to improve it.
Yeah, and Leif had detailed notes for every instructor.
Yeah.
Like after the talk, and he shared those notes with me, and it was cool because it was very much in line with the things that I had for myself after I sat back there. I sat back there for a little bit and debriefed my talk. I'm like, man, I should have added this. I should have changed this. Man, I wasn't very clear on my ownership on this portion of what I added to my brief and need to be a little more clear on that. Hey, I could probably cut this out next time. It was almost identical to Leif's feedback points that he had for me. And then I had also talked with Jen and Lindley later that day after my brief, because I speak on day 1, and everything that I had was in line with what they said, which was in line with what Leif said. And it was just really cool to have that alignment, but the opportunity for me to be able to talk with people that were on my team that cared, that wanted to help facilitate my improvement and growth.
And that's the point I wanted to make is that the amount, it's so apparent how much everybody cares. The instructors care, even between the team. And that's one of the things that I heard a lot of people say. So initially you asked me my perspective of talking to people on what they were getting. Hands down, what I hear the most when people come out is they need to work on their communication. I think that's I hear that
the most consistent.
The most consistent. And then I hear a lot of people I wondered if in person it would, like, I feel like you guys care, and then I see you actually do care. I've had multiple people tell me, like, I didn't know if those guys were going to be just like they were online, or let's say they do the Monday calls or whatever, and then being there in person, it's apparent how much Echelon front cares. So I'd hear a lot of that communication, and then probably the other big thing people say is, I don't think they fully grasp it, but they come out and they start talking about how much they're the problem, more than they thought. So
I love seeing that aha moment when I'm talking with people. I'm just asking them questions. I had one guy, I'm just asking him questions, just ask him questions, and he sits there. I won't say what he said because we want to keep our rating as clean as it is. And he goes, mother. He's like looking away, and he looks at me. He goes, I'm the problem.
Yeah.
I'm the problem.
The light bulb came on.
I said, and I just asked him another question. I said, if you haven't been doing these things with your people, how can you expect them to do them?
Yeah. If
you haven't been willing to have these hard conversations, how can you expect your leaders to have the hard conversations with their people? He goes, I hate you. I don't like you right now. And I just smiled, and he goes, I'm just kidding. He goes, I'm sorry. And I said, I know I didn't take it as a actual statement that you hated me. And he just sat there, and he's like looking down at his piece of paper, and he looks up at me, and he goes, thank you. Yeah. He goes, okay. I know what I need to fix. And I said, cool, let's talk about it. Let's role play through it. And this was another guy that I was able to role play through some stuff, and we're going to jump on a call in a week or two to figure out what the next steps look like for me to be able to come work with his team. But it was really cool for him to have that aha moment at the muster.
Yeah.
And him recognize, to reiterate your point, that he was a problem with his people. And it was a communication issue.
Imagine that. I've had people come out and tell me that the reason they came was so they could learn how to get someone else to take ownership. And intent has a smell. Cody, they all talk about that. Cody has a very particular talk I always think about. But my point in saying that, I've had people come admit that is why they came, because they wanted to learn how to get someone else to do it. And in the process of that, realizing how much of the problem it was their fault with the friction they have with this individual that initially they were seeking out to trick into ownership. Yeah. And I think that's powerful.
Yeah, that's called manipulation.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't do it that way. But even in them seeking that out, they came to the realization that they were, in fact, the problem.
Yeah. It's a nice, humbling reminder when you realize that. And I'm often reminded of that as well myself. Lucas, what thoughts do you have before we shift to FTX takeaways and just talking points?
Yeah, I just want to know what it was like having Alex Stone at the muster, because he is Seth's brother.
Yeah.
Seth has talked about in a lot of the briefs. He's mentioned in nearly, I would say, every one of the major briefs. What was it like having, his brother there to listen to that and knowing that you're there in front of a guy who's seems like really good friends with all of y'all, but whose legacy y'all are continuing to remember and pass on the lessons that y'all learned from him?
Humbling, Seth was my big brother, and Alex is now my big brother, and I've been able to have an incredible friendship developed with Alex. And him and his wife, when they come in town, whether it's just them or them and their kids, like, they stay with us. And every time he's in town, I just get so much from my time with Alex. He's so incredibly brilliant, and that's probably an understatement for anybody that's spent some time talking with Alex. It was just it's always a good reminder of how intelligent Seth was and is, or I guess was, and how intelligent Alex is. I remember him and his wife came down because they were driving down for the muster, and so they come down a few days early, and they stayed with us, and we hung out. We went to church, and then they ended up staying the night with us, and then they left. And afterwards, Amanda made the comment, it was a comment along the lines of how intelligent Alex is. And she said something along the lines of, I don't know how he retains so much information, because we'll be talking about something and he pretty much can correlate anything that you talk about back to something in the Bible. Every single time. I mean, he has 3 different master's degrees. He has master's degrees in biblical theology. He has one in teaching, and then one in Hebrew, so that he can connect and correlate all those things together. And it's just unreal. And so that is always encouraging and incredible, and just having different talking points. But also him just being there is just very humbling, because it's a representation of Seth. And it's also a good reminder of Seth's legacy that he has left, because now I have this close connection with Alex, even though Seth is gone. And so I still have with Alex what I had with Seth, which is incredible. So it's incredible. Yeah, that's the word. Incredible. All right. What do you got?
Yeah. As far as the muster stuff goes, the stuff, it sounds like, I mean, we covered a lot when we talked about muster 017, when we talked about muster 020. So, you know, if people want to know more about the particulars of those things, I think they check those things out. I'm curious. I know that there were a couple of people, as we're getting into the FTX stuff, that pre-booked, but then they hear about, hey, we're doing an FTX tomorrow, and now you got some folks that are like trying to get in the game. They're like, hey, all right, so it's day 1, day 2 of the muster. I'm hearing about the FTX that's happening, post muster. How do I get in on that? And then how many people did you have that like tried to get in at the last minute? And then what was the transition like for you going from muster to FTX? Because as much as the principles are the same, the execution of those events are vastly different in the way that they operate. Yeah.
I will say it was already sold out.
Yeah.
So nobody else was able to add. We had some shifts, some transfers, but nobody could sign up at the muster for the FTX because those spots are already full.
That's why you got to do it in advance, people.
Yeah. Muster 023, that's actually coming up. We're going to be in Orlando on December 7th, 8th, and 9th. So day 1, which is a registration meet and greet, is on Sunday, December 7th. And then the muster will be on Monday the 8th, Tuesday the 9th. And then the post-muster 023 FTX will be on December 10th. Wednesday, December 10th. So you can go to echelonfront.com to get signed up for that. And FTX 18 that I was talking about, that's not on the website yet. Maybe it will be when this comes out. Allegedly is supposed to be on the dates of where registration meet and greet is on Wednesday, October 1st here in Dallas, Fort Worth. And then the FTX will be on Thursday, October 2nd and Friday, October 3rd. So that's October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And again, that'll be on echelonfront.com. Go to events and then scroll through for FTXs. So there was a good amount of people that wanted to, but they couldn't. And I think that bumped some of our numbers for the Orlando one for individuals that were going to be going back to that muster, and so that was able to bump that. But in regards to like the shift, as we're getting ready to close out this episode, I know we've talked about both of them back and forth. The shifts for me as an instructor and for Cody and I and the FTX team isn't anything major. We've done these hundreds of times over the last couple years, but 2, the mindset shift isn't that different because it's the same principles.
Right.
We're teaching the same principles just in a different environment. So our intentionality is the same. Our SOPs are just different because it's a different event. But everything on the ops side with Josh and and Justin and Jesse and James and all those guys that are working almost every FTX, they already know what they need to do. Like Coulter as well, Aaron Coulter, and Joe Reyna and all those guys. And it's cool. Jack was able to join this FTX because he was here with the muster. But our primary guys, which is Josh, Jesse, James, Joe, Coulter, Cowie will come, when he can. Those guys are just, they already know what to do. Their SOPs are in place. Their roles and responsibilities are clear. They use what we teach. They're covering and moving for each other.
Yeah.
Their communication is simple, clear, and concise. Their SOPs are simple, clear, and concise. The SOPs are understood. They understand their priorities per individual. They also understand, like, hey, priorities are going to shift and change as long as we have alignment with what we're trying to accomplish. Hey, and they're always asking, talking about, okay, what's going to have the greatest impact? What's going to have the greatest impact? And sometimes that means the priorities are going to shift, and they're fine with that. And they're using decentralized command among their team. That's what Cody does with his team. He uses the laws of combat. Same thing that we do at the muster. We use the laws of combat. So I would say there isn't that big of a shift because we're still doing what we teach real time. It's just in a slightly different environment. Yeah. But it's cool to see different takeaways because they're in a completely different environment. So from your perspective, Josh, what are some of the big takeaways that you saw and or heard from the different attendees, whether it was in between runs, after the full day of training, which thank you, Lord, for your grace with the weather because it started lightly raining at the very end of the last run, Lucas. We got back to the staging area and it was like, the bottom fell out.
Good grief.
Sideways wind. Things were getting blown all over. It was unreal. And it was instantly, as soon as everybody walked underneath the cover, it just like
torrential downpour.
It went angry.
It got spicy really quick.
Real spicy.
Yeah. But from all throughout that time, and then even back at the hotel when we're doing the final debrief and their graduation ceremony, what were some of the takeaways that you saw?
I think it's really cool the way they do it when it's right after a muster because you're initially going from the theory to actually putting it into practice, and they're learning it. They're immersed in it, and it's there. Even though once they get out on the field, like you said, it's a different scenario. I think that's the biggest thing is the self-assessment is normally the biggest takeaway because they'll come in with some type of idea on the balance assessment. I'm pretty good at decentralized command. And then when it's their turn to plan a mission, they come back really quickly like, I'm not as good at that as I thought I was. So I think having that mirror, that's initially the biggest thing. I think what's cool about the post-muster FTX is they're already kind of dialed into it, so it's not as hard to get them past the laser tag tactics part of it. Yeah. So they're coming very intentional with how they're approaching the training, and I think that opens the discussion, like on the debriefs between runs on what they're wanting to work on, and I think they see it quicker that way.
Yeah, 100%. Also, there is a big difference in the attendees depending on their level of humility.
Yes.
And I think that's a big takeaway our listeners can think about and hope to apply. When you're going into these hard situations, which is called life, the more humility you have, the better the outcome is going to be for you.
Yeah.
You're going to have more growth and development, the higher level, the higher your level of humility that you have. And we saw that with Jonathan and Ann and Lauren and and Rusty and a handful of other guys like
Mackenzie.
Yeah, Mackenzie, his growth. He was an honor grad because of his humility, which facilitated his growth. And, the debriefs facilitate and expedite growth. And we debrief after every single run. And I know we've talked about that before on the podcast, but I think it's a good reminder for all of us that you should be debriefing all the time. And the debrief is a powerful tool that helps facilitate and expedite growth to the point where that one leader, Jeff, was talking with me about, hey, I need this at my organization, and just understanding, just how important the debrief was for his people to see and feel that.
Yeah, the role players usually pick a table and talk to them on the in-between runs after the debrief. And Jeff and Mackenzie both were at the table I was at, and so I've got some notes on them. I won't share too much, but he was looking at that early on, as he was doing such an honest self-assessment of himself, he was seeing those tendencies he had and those areas he was lacking, and quickly saw the value of bringing his team. And I think the other cool thing you see is as they progress through the runs and their debriefs, as their communication gets better, they start covering more for their other teammates, and kind of helping lead them. You know, they may be subordinates and their position changes every run, but I saw one of them was it's with the armorer. You know, there was not a good relationship being built, and I've watched one of the guys from the table I was talking to start to not be humble, and then his teammate step in and be like, oh, and he's over there coaching him, and in a way, because he cares, not like don't do that, but actually showing him why, and seeing that interaction. So the growth from the instruction and then between each other, it makes it's rapid in how they start to course correct.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point for us to kind of wrap it up on, is just this thought that an individual can provide coaching and correction to an individual that they had zero previous relationship with.
Yeah.
Because of humility and intentionality. Mm-hmm. Because one, they're both there for the same reasons. Now, one person might have been there because their leader brought them or told them to go. But for the most part, people that are coming to an individual FTX or a post-muster FTX, they're in the game.
Yeah, usually.
And I would say a strong percentage, they're in the game. Occasionally you'll get somebody, they're like there with their boss, that their boss made them come, which is still great because they get a lot out of it, and they all have their own aha moments. But that point that you just talked about is so powerful that if you use these principles, you can actually influence people that you had zero previous relationship with, because they started to build relationships.
Yep.
They were intentional about using cover moves, simple, prioritize and execute, decentralized command. They're taking ownership. They're showing humility. That's a really powerful thing.
It's awesome to see.
That's unreal. Lucas, what questions do you have for us, bud? And we've got time, obviously, for more questions before we close it out. But
yeah, so the FTXs seems so dependent upon the success or failure of an FTX is dependent upon not just the personalities of the people there, but their ability to humble themselves.
Yes.
However, some of the scenarios are built to humble people.
100%.
100%.
And we have a 100% average of making that happen.
It always happens.
They are all winnable.
Yeah, when
if
you
guys, can utilize
your own humility. When you're setting those things up, right? How much of the choosing of the leaders is luck of the draw, and how much of it is like, oh no, this person needs to go here and this person hasn't led yet, and you're trying to balance all those things out so everybody gets the experience that they paid for, to make sure that they're able to execute on the leadership principles. And how often do you find yourselves in a situation where you're like, all right, this guy, he's going to do this scenario. He or she needs to come to an understanding about where their desires and capabilities are not meeting.
The leadership position always finds the person.
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay, yeah, so unpack that for me.
We don't have to assign individuals to certain runs, because the leadership positions and principles will find the person, meaning they will be exposed no matter what role or position you're in. And it doesn't matter if you're the OIC on the first run, the third run, or the last run, it's going to expose your weaknesses.
Yeah.
We have designed a program that it does not matter who's in what position for what run. It will expose what needs to be exposed for you as an individual, which is really cool, because it means that we don't have to manipulate anything. It's just an exposure to your flaws, which we all have as a leader, as a human, that allows you to facilitate your own growth if you choose to have humility and apply those principles. Now, there's a time and place occasionally where we're like, oh, this person needs this run. but that is so rare.
Yeah.
And even when we do that, let's just say we had Josh set up as an OIC for run 3 and Lucas, you're going to be fire team leader. And as the day's progressing, Cody and I are like, you know what? Lucas needs the OIC run for run 3 and we swap you. Josh is going to get the same learning objectives that he needed as an individual based off of that position as well.
Yeah. I do think that's one of the things that a lot of people might assume. It was certainly one of my assumptions, right? Whenever I was at the first FTX that I went to, is watching those interactions and seeing somebody and being like, oh, this is a cocky jerk. They're going to give him this one. And then like, no, he's going to be the fire team leader. And then they come back and their heads all down. And I was like, he didn't even do that bad. But the communication and all of those things and all the breaking points where stuff breaks down, it's really interesting to me that you don't have to manipulate the people and like the positions that they're in, that they figure this stuff out anyway. Because as soon as you go to do something and nobody responds, or you get timid with the decision, you're not default aggressive, or that first time that laser tag system goes off and it's like, and you're like, no, that person's down. Like, I suck at this. I want to go run and hide. Like, I'm done. Can we debrief now? And we just say I'm terrible at everything.
Well,
Cody,
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Cody always says something too. He's like, because the instructors are passionate, they do care. It's not a boot camp, but like they're gonna call you on your stuff. And he said this numerous times. He's like, if you feel like I'm talking to you, I am. Now he may not be directly saying, Lucas, this thing right here is for you, but he's saying things, and if it's speaking to you, it's speaking to you, and it's meant for you. And I think that's similar with the runs. Like you're gonna get it no matter what position you're in. You're going to feel your shortcomings.
Yeah.
What value is there for a lot of these executive leaders to find themselves in positions where they are nothing but followers?
You can't put a value on it.
No.
Because every single FTX, and I heard it again multiple times at this FTX, was I now know what my people feel like. There was a leader, his debrief point was, I now understand what the people on my team feel working for me and the other leaders, and they're in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's invaluable.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of us that end up in leadership positions, and once we reach a certain level of leadership, then we don't end up in positions where we're having to follow anymore.
Yeah.
And being thrown into a situation where everybody else is making the plan and all that, like, okay, that feels a little nice until it's time to execute and you're out of the details.
Yeah.
Remembering that feeling, especially getting to do it in a scenario where, there's a lot at stake in the scenario. And as everything kind of plays out, we joked last time, or whenever I went to the FTX, that this is like more like Dungeons and Dragons in real life than it is the tabletop role-playing game, because all the scenarios build on each other right there. The consequences from one thing, compound the consequences in the next run. But the idea that you're going to be somebody who has the sole responsibility to just follow orders, for some executives, it might be 10, 15, 20 years since they've been in that position.
Yeah. That's why we've gotten a good amount of corporate FTXs from the individual FTXs, because we'll have leaders like you were just talking about that realize, oh, this is what my people feel like.
Yeah.
And then they sign up for us to come do an FTX with their company. And so for our listeners, before we close it out, the debrief point for you from that is go find ways to feel and hear and understand the perspectives of your people.
Yeah.
You need to go spend time with your people. Don't have an open door policy, have an open chair policy, meaning get up out of your chair, go spend time with your men and women to understand and feel their perspectives so that you can have a better relationship, which allows you to have more influence, which is what leadership is. So, man, this has been a good episode. I know we could sit and talk for a few more hours about these things.
For sure.
I know you're getting ready to close it out, but just as a quick reminder to our people, if you go to echelonfront.com for future events, if you want to come to a muster 023 is going to be in Orlando, Florida on Sunday, December 7th, 8th and 9th. And then we have the post muster FTX on Wednesday, the 10th. FTX 18 should be live on the website within the next week or two. It's supposed to be on Wednesday, October 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd. That's here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then also go to firstinnutrition.com/JPPod to get your 4 free weeks of coaching, which is crazy.
That's good stuff, man.
Do it.
And
if you're looking for a good polo, go to Hooli Golf.
yeah,
Check them out.
Yeah.
check them out.
They
Which, by the way,
The
those are
Arnold. What was that?
yeah,
one?
the Palma, because
Palma.
they got a cease
Yeah.
and desist with the Arnold
yeah.
Palmer.
You know he's got a Big Lebowski one too.
Yep.
Yeah.
But those are going to be the
It abides.
Hooli Golf is going to be the new official Echelon front polo in the very near future.
What?
Oh yeah,
Oh man, that's pretty rad.
it's incredible. So, all
Very
right, what do you
cool.
got for us, bud?
Yeah, well, if you want to check that stuff out, make sure to do it. Also, when you sign up for your first in stuff, go back, look at the Sunday Fun Day from May the 4th be with you, from All Star Wars Day, and get some of the takeaways that Jonathan and Ann had from their time at the FTX. If you want to follow us on social media, you want to join the conversation on Instagram, I'm at Lucas Pinkard, JP is at JP Dinnell, and Josh is at Josh Strasburger, spelled with extra S's all the way across the board. Like JP said, make sure that you check out all the stuff that's going on at Echelon Front. Get in on that Leadership Academy, that online academy that happens on Monday afternoons. If you want more info about that, go to info or email info@echelonfront.com. The Extreme Ownership Academy is well worth the time and value. Right before we did this, there were a couple of us that were hanging out with the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast folks.
Yep.
Because we got new episodes of that coming out every Tuesday. And on May 24th, Saturday, May 24th at noon, over in Plano, Texas, we got Marcus Buchecha, who's coming to give us a little jiu-jitsu seminar, which I am super stoked about. Kind of one of those guys that's beyond belief that we're getting to do a little bit of an event with him. So
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, super cool. You get to meet him, do some rolls, and learn some of the techniques that make one of the greatest world champion jiu-jitsu practitioners of all time. Little Cattle Co. Go check it out, littlecattle.co.
Get that beef.
That's what I'm talking about, bro.
Yeah, dog.
The body butter, the tallow cream, lip balm, and those beef sticks, the jalapeno, and the regular flavor.
I gave Jonathan and some beef sticks because I had them with me at the muster.
Oh, yeah?
Always travel. That's a little travel hack, so that you're not eating crappy food on the road. Get you some of those little cattle beef sticks. Have them in your backpack, briefcase, whatever. And Jonathan sent me a picture of a half-eaten one. He goes, "Bro, these are unreal."
So first in approved
Yes.
on the beef sticks.
Yep.
That's what I'm talking about. JP and Josh, two guys who are with me here, On the Path Printing. Check them out at On the Path on Instagram, or On the Path Printing on Instagram.
Yep.
New shirts about to come out. The Never Settle line by JP Dinnell is
Not
about
wearing it today.
to get relaunched. The NCC shirts are about to hit, and that 4th of July, you got to keep watching. Check out the at JP Dinnell Podcast Instagram, because it's going to drop, and nobody's going to be tagged in it. And it's just going to be our 4th of July mock shirt. I'm going to get your opinions on it. What things might need to be added to it, and should there be finger guns? Who knows? We'll have to figure that out.
No, you guys can do that for Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu.
Luckily,
swag.
the two of us.
There's veto power in there, but we got to give the people what they want.
Let me check the bylaws.
Sometimes the people don't get what they want.
We've been talking about the FTX. Leif, Jocko, and JP put that training together, but they also do some training if you want to know a little bit more about how to handle. Maybe you got some pew-pews in your house. Mm-hmm. You want to have a little bit more experience on what to do, how to handle them properly. Or maybe you're like, you know what? I want the exact type of gear and loadout that the guys would have used. Go check out Bruiser Arms.
Yep.
They got all the cool stuff. They've got the world's coolest box opener. It's made by Half Face Blades, and it's got a pretty cool logo on there. And then big thanks, as always, to Jocko Fuel and Origin for keeping the podcast fueled and ready to go, keeping us hydrated, keeping our electrolytes up, keeping our joints good with that krill oil, our sleep and energy good with that creatine, and our clothes, keeping us clothed well.
Best American. I mean, like all their stuff, but it's the fact that it's 100% American made is unreal.
Yep.
I know you're wearing the jeans. You're wearing the jeans.
Yeah,
I'm wearing the Moabs.
I'm wearing the work jeans because our drain's been clogged at the house, and
You're gonna go do some work at the house.
They haven't dug. They didn't haven't gotten to dig our ditch yet so that we can like rerun all the plumbing lines. So I made a little makeshift deal where you just go straight from the drain and you pull the rubber hose out. So I'm digging underneath the house, and Kirsten's like, "You gonna wear your Good Origin jeans? You don't want to mess them up." I was like, "These aren't gonna get messed up.
Nope.
They're made for work.
Yes.
They're gonna get mud on them.
Built to work.
They're gonna get mud on them. I'm gonna take them out and spray them with a hose so that it doesn't get in the washing machine, which is not made to work." Toss those jeans in there, and then boom, done. Did it on Friday. Wearing them again today. Because I got business stuff I got to go take care of,
Yes.
and they look nice.
Yes,
even though they were covered in mud and schmutz. JP, you got some closing thoughts for us, man?
Yeah, as I was thinking and reflecting about this episode, it's just a good reminder for myself and all of us to be intentional and find ways to be more disciplined with what you have going on in your life. So I hope this episode has been a reminder to go do the work that's needed, to put in the effort, to build your legacy, and to never settle. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 85.